Hardtalk India. One of the biggest challenges the new government faces in India is to reverse the politicization of education. It's one policy on which all its partners are completely agreed. But is it happening satisfactorily, or is it happening in a piecemeal, perhaps even erratic fashion? That's the central question I shall pose today to the man in charge of the task, the Human Resource Development Minister, Arjun Singh. Mr. Arjun Singh, you've returned to the Human Resource Development Ministry after a gap of 10 years, which makes you the only person to have held the portfolio twice. What are your targets? What are your goals?
What you have just said about the saffronization of education is one of the things mentioned in the Common Minimum Program. And therefore, naturally, that becomes my first priority. And here I would like to say that this has happened in the last 5 years in varied ways and in different places. But I am not going about it in a hurry, because that would create an impression as if we are trying to do something in a vindictive manner or in a manner which perhaps does not do justice.
Can I quote to you the Common Minimum Program? It says, the UPA government, United Progressive Alliance government, will take immediate steps to reverse the trend of communalization of education that has set in the first 5 years. This is, you say, your priority number one.
Yes.
But the left argues that you're not taking the word immediate seriously. They say you're procrastinating. They say you're indulging in half measures.
Well, I don't think that is correct. There's no question of any half measure. But whatever you have to do it within the framework of the administrative setup. And as I said, too much of a hurry could destroy the purpose of this whole exercise.
So you're saying that you need to do it constitutionally and legally, and secondly, you don't want to look as if you're vindictive.
Yes.
But then let me give you an example that the left frequently cites. They say that you've appointed a 3-person panel to review the so-called saffronized history textbooks released by the National Council for Educational Research and Training. But they argue that in fact what you should have done, and I'm now quoting senior historians like Arjun Dev and Irfan Habib, is to scrap the textbooks altogether, not review them, and replace them with the older textbooks. Why haven't you done that?
That is easier said than done, because the real problem that arose in this, it could have been the easiest thing to do. One order was enough. But then the question of, we are almost, our educational session is to begin. And if we remove a textbook and are not able to bring a new textbook in time and in sufficient numbers, it can only cause problems for the students. And that is what I wanted to avoid at any cost. Secondly, yes, I may feel that this textbook should go or that textbook should go. But I think it will be wiser to let a group of people who are really knowledgeable in this sphere, let them have a review, and it's only 15 days time that I gave them.
In other words, you don't want to impose your own personal decision. You would rather a valid panel did so.
Actually, that is.
But the left argues that these textbooks are so riddled with distortions, both factual and ideological, that you simply can't correct them. They say, for instance, taking 3, that the list of errors in just those 3 runs to 130 pages.
Well, I haven't counted the pages. And in any case, as I said, I would like to go by advice of people who are knowledgeable instead of purely political decisions.
That's a fairly justified argument. Yes. But let me then put something else to you. The rules of the NCERT stipulate that an author's textbook cannot be altered without the author's permission. So suppose after your review, if you want to undertake revision, the authors refuse, or worse, go to court, your whole review will come unstuck.
Don't get unstuck, but even at the risk of that situation developing, I would still go by this.
So you would rather a process that looked to the left as if it was cumbersome and potentially controversial, provided it looked to everyone else as if it was visibly fair and proper?
Well, I think being fair and proper is itself not a bad thing.
Except for the fact that in the interim, the very children in whose interest you want to correct politicization of education are now still being taught on the basis of books that you yourself don't agree with and others don't think are wholesome.
Well, these are adjectives which are understandable, but the fact is that if this exercise had started in March, it would have been a different thing, but we came into power only in the month of May.
So in other words, time factors didn't leave you any other choice.
No.
And if one more generation of students is being taught on the basis of politicized textbooks, that's better than doing an improper act.
No, it's not a question. I don't think that risk is there. We have thought of whatever will be necessary, but I do think that that contingency will not arise.
Okay, another area where the left say that you're dragging your feet is over what they call the National School Curriculum Framework. They want you to withdraw it immediately because they argue that otherwise BJP governments in states like Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh could use that same framework to commission new saffronized textbooks and on that basis continue with ideologically tainted education.
I know some people may be impatient about it, but it is not only the concern of the left. The left is very much has a view, and I value that view. It is also other people who are involved. And therefore, actually what went wrong really was the arbitrary action of the previous government in, I won't say scrapping because it has not scrapped it, but it has brought it into disuse, is the CAB, which is the basic body which decides all these things in the education department. By doing away with it, they destroyed that check and balance and then started doing whatever they wanted to do.
Are you saying that whatever new curriculum framework you will pass has to go through the CABE and not like the previous government around it?
I would not like to go around it, and I'm trying my level best to see that the new CAB is in place within a very short time.
But again, the risk you run is that in the interim, if a BJP government in Rajasthan or Madhya Pradesh who disagrees with the review of the NCERT textbooks chooses, it can use this framework to commission fresh saffronized textbooks and continue with ideologically tainted education. In other words, the problem is not going to be cured.
That is an apprehension, but I don't think that will happen.
Are you confident of that, or are you simply saying it because you don't want to appear as if you're being vindictive, you want to be seen to be proper?
No, it's not only a question of not being vindictive, but I think the national policy of education, which was framed by late Rajiv Ji, is not a sort of thing that was done in a almost like a reaction.
Okay, what about something else? You want to follow correct procedures, and that's admirable, but in the process, are you being complacent to the dangers of slowness?
I wouldn't deny totally that there may be some problems at some point of time, but those also we will be able to take care of them in this manner much better if we were to do it straight away and then be faced with a situation.
So like the old metaphor, you're saying slow and steady wins the race. Haste.
You can always coin that.
What about something else? It's not just over curriculum, it's not just over textbooks that the left is being critical of you. They've also asked you to review and in fact scrap the political appointments made to major educational institutions like the Council for Historical Research, the Social Science Research Council, the University Grants Commission. They've demanded that you cancel these appointments. You've responded with intriguing silence.
Well, there's nothing intriguing about it, but all these bodies, they have a constitution, they have a procedure. I'm not a dictator, who can say tomorrow this man be sent home, and it is not done that way. I'm working on each one of them, and I'm sure that in a very short time we will have the result which the authors of the CMP want.
You're sure that you will have a result which the authors of the CMP want?
Yes.
The left believes that the authors want some of these political appointments reversed. Will that happen?
That will be one of the things that will happen.
Many people say that when politicians say there's a procedure, there's a proper way, that's code for actually delaying things. Perhaps it's code for not doing it at all.
It's very unfair to take that interpretation. I'm very sure that this is not the intention.
Let me tell you why I take that interpretation. The left, who incidentally are your allies, they're not your opponents, say that when saffronization of education used to be discussed in Parliament, the last time I believe was November 2001, Mr. Arjun Singh stood up and called it Talibanization. That was strong language. Yet today, when he's in power and in a position to do things, he's making haste so slowly, we're beginning to question what his intentions are.
Well, one's intentions are always to be questioned, but if one is true to his own convictions, that is in the intermediate stage, things that will go that way.
So you're saying to the left, trust me, I won't let you down.
Well, it's not a question of letting anybody down. It's carrying out a program which has been decided by all of us.
But you're not going weak at the idea of tackling what you call Talibanization.
Certainly not. Why
you
should
will
I?
reverse it.
Well, to the extent and the manner in which it has been called for, it will be done.
Okay. To use your own phrase, detoxification of the previous government's policies is one part of your agenda. The other is clearly the spread of education in India. How important is the second?
I think that is the most important. That first is, of course, has arisen because of factors which were not actually related directly to the educational, but it has arisen and it has to be done. So far as the spread of education is concerned, I think there we have a very positive objective, and the first thing that has to be taken care of are the resources, because everything then comes to a stop.
I want very much to talk about resources, but before we come to resources, let me put this to you. After 57 years of independence, India has only been able to achieve 65% literacy. As Education Minister, are you satisfied with that record?
Certainly not, but this 65% I may be permitted to say that the percentage has gone up very drastically in the last 15-20 years, and therefore it is not a target which we can sort of say it is inconsequential, and the whole approach, now there is no problem in this and there is no controversy also. So we have to see that this goes on in this same manner.
But you need to push it faster.
Absolutely, it has to be pushed faster. And
you're not complacent?
No, the question doesn't arise. And I was just going to tell you why I think it can be achieved. Because resources are a constraint. Now the CMP has also mentioned that there will be a cess of 2% on central revenues, and that will yield something to the tune of 6,000 to 6,500 crores, and that will be utilized mainly for the elementary education and the literacy.
Your CMP also says, and this in a sense is the more colorful of your promises, that you will increase expenditure on education to 6% of GDP, but you add that it will happen in a phased manner. Do you have a target date by when you want to achieve that?
I don't think you can put a date on that. And
can you do it in the 5 years of this administration, assuming you run all 5?
Of course we are going to run 5.
But can you then achieve 6% of GDP expenditure on education in those 5 years?
We will come very close, but I don't think it will be achieved totally.
You don't think it will be achieved?
Totally.
Let me put something to you. The highest level of public spending on education was in the year 2000-2001 when it touched 4.3%. Since then, it's fallen again. You're really confident that you can boost it by 45,000 crore rupees a year to come close to 6%?
Well, it will come close because apart from the cess that I have just mentioned, the planned allocation also is being revised, and I think in the next budget we will have some inclination, some indication of that. And of course I know the pitfalls and I know the constraints, but we'll have to do it, and we can't sort of sit back and say that, oh, what can I do? That is
Let me then put a blunt question to you, Minister. How close is close?
Well, it is as close as it can be.
Except that people considered 4.3% close, and that was by no means close enough.
Yes.
Will you get to 5%?
I see no reason why we should not.
Will you get to 5.5%?
Well, I don't think that is a thing that can be taken that way. But we will achieve 5 and perhaps even 5.5.
Skeptics say that you can only get to 5.5 if you accept foreign investment in education. Can you accept that?
No, foreign investment in education at what stage? You see, foreign investment in higher education is quite different. That doesn't take care of your literacy.
What about foreign investment in elementary schools?
Well, some World Bank is giving some aid in that, and that is also...
What about private sector foreign investment from endowments, from private companies, from institutions?
Well, for that we can evolve a policy. At the moment there is none. But we can certainly evolve a policy, because once we have a reform regime, I don't see any difficulty, but the policy has to be first formulated, and then that could also be added source.
So you don't have a refusal to foreign investment. You have an open mind.
Absolutely.
You see no problem in taking it, provided a proper policy.
Yeah, I've already said that.
But how will you handle the howls of protest from the left?
No, there won't be any protest. I mean...
They don't like the idea of foreign investment in education at all. Not even from the World Bank, leave aside from private sources.
Well, I think that is not as I understand the whole thing.
So you think you can win them around?
I won't win anybody around, but I think everyone will see the practical side of it also. Of course, all the policies will have to take into account that there is no undue influence on the education policy.
But with necessary checks and balances, foreign investment, even in elementary education, will be welcome if a proper formula policy can be worked out.
Yes, certainly.
In the meantime, compulsory and free education for all children between the ages of 6 and 14 has become a constitutional right, but it hasn't been enforced. You've inherited from the last government a bill that seeks to make it a reality. Have you had a chance to study that bill?
I not studied it, but I know about it, and my own impression then was, and even today, that this bill was enacted as a, what you may call, a propaganda, without taking into account all the basic things that were required. And that is why whenever this issue was raised, the government always said that yes, we will come to that and we will see that it... But at the moment we don't see anything there.
So you are saying the bill is inadequate as it exists?
Yes, inadequate in the sense that we don't have the wherewithal to enforce everything.
What about the provisions of the bill? You're talking about resources, which is wherewithal, but what about the provisions of the bill? Are you satisfied with those?
More or less the provisions are all right. Maybe one or two things have to be...
What are these one or two things? You paused then and didn't finish your sentence.
No, I mean, I said there could be one or two things which could be looked into, but there's nothing which is really objectionable.
Let me put something to you. Top educationists, Professor Anil Sadgopal to take an example, argue that this bill effectively legitimizes alternative or parallel schools with semi-trained teachers for disadvantaged sections of society. Is that acceptable to you?
Well, the manner in which this has been phrased, I would certainly like to have a better look at it.
He also points out that the bill permits whole districts to be handed over to religious bodies or corporate bodies to run schools virtually as they want. Is that acceptable?
I would like to enter this debate because it is a matter which should be debated with a little more information. And I think people have views about certain things, and they feel that those views are the last. I don't think that is so.
But a moment ago you said to me that there was nothing objectionable about the bill. Now you seem to be suggesting that you want to look at certain clauses again.
As I said, there were certain clauses which could be looked into, but this manner in which this has been put by you, I don't think that is something which...
Okay, the overall constitutional guarantee of free and compulsory education will only become a reality when all children of school-going age actually go to school.
Yes.
How large is the number of children in India who don't go to school?
Fairly large.
Put a figure on it.
Well, I can't put a figure exactly, but it's quite a large.
The Tapas Majumdar Committee 1999, the last substantial inquiry into the state of education in India, estimated it to be 100 million, 10 crore.
Could be.
That's not a figure that you dispute.
No.
The same committee estimated that to put all these children into school, it would cost 13,700 crore a year for 10 years. That's only 0.5% of GDP, by no means a frightening sum of money. And yet every government, including the last administration in which you were for the first time HRD minister, failed to bite this bullet.
Well, what you say is the net result of the situation. But why it could not be done is quite a different thing. And with a little determination, I think we could make a substantial difference in the situation. And I am confident that that kind of atmosphere will be generated, created, and also the resources will be found.
You said something very interesting, with a little determination. Are you therefore accepting that the political will to boost education to the top of the agenda has been missing?
Well, the fact is that it is. I mean, I am not letting out a secret. The fact is, and that has to be...
You're not letting out a secret, but you're confirming something that politicians have never confirmed before in public. You're saying that 57 years of politicians in India, of education ministers in India, have failed to give education the priority it should have had.
No, that will be putting it in a sensorial manner, but I think they should also take into account as to why this has happened. And therefore, it is not a question of our censoring everyone in the past. The fact is that we have not been able to do it, and there have been so many reasons. Now that the...
But you accept that absence of political will?
To some extent that also. To some extent that also. But, I mean, you can't just put the blame on everybody else but your own self.
No, I'm not asking you to put the blame on everyone but yourself. Include yourself, because you've been HRD minister.
Yes, definitely.
So, absence of political will has held back the development of education?
To some extent, yes.
And would you also accept that all talk of making India a 21st century country, of making it a developed country by 2020, will remain, forgive my language, poppycock, if the people of the country are not educated?
Well, that is something which I don't have to sort of deride, but that is a challenge which now we have to meet. So
and it's a fact.
And that is a fact. That's why the challenge is there.
Then can you give me a guarantee that you, in the light of what you've just seen and said, and in the light of your experience, will take education to the top of the agenda?
That will be my sole objective, and that will be my endeavor. And I'm sure, with the help of everyone else, this would be achieved.
That will be your sole objective?
Yes.
In other words, when you remit office 5 years from now, You will consider yourself a failure if education in India is not firmly and fully established for every Indian child.
Well, that will be the objective which has to be kept in view.
Arjun Singh, a pleasure having you on Hardtalk India.
Thank you.